in money, not lacking food, not lacking clothes. But they lack something even more dangerous, inner peace. Wherever they go, they see themselves as right. Whatever they say, they feel they are above. And whoever they look at, they see at fault. Do you know where that leads? It leads to a very strange kind of suffering. Suffering right in the middle of success. Suffering right in the middle of applause. Suffering inside a fully furnished home. Yet still seeing the world as dark. Tonight, I will tell you the story of a man once respected by the entire region, who once believed he was the light, but it turned out that his ego was the deepest darkness. And only when he stopped searching for other people's faults did he understand one simple thing. When the mind is bright, the world is bright too. His name was Phạm Lâm. In the region, to mention Phạm Lâm was to mention someone capable. Capable in business, capable in speech, capable in calculation, capable of standing before a crowd and making people nod. He had the biggest shop in the market, a rice warehouse, cargo boats, and even a 3-room wooden house that every Tate season made passersby glance over. But what made Phạm Lâm proudest wasn't money, it was authority. He liked the feeling of people admiring him. He liked the feeling that when he walked into a tea stall, voices lowered. He liked the feeling that when he spoke at the village hall, everyone fell silent. He often said one sentence, "In life, you must have a head. Without a head, life will step on you." After saying it, he would often laugh, the laugh of someone who believed he had understood the whole of life. At home, Phạm Lâm was also right. His wife, Mrs. Hunt, whatever she said was wrong. His son, Tin, whatever he did was never enough. At one meal, Tin set his bowl down a little too hard. Phạm Lâm frowned. Even eating like that, you don't know how to keep proper manners. Later in life, people will look down on you. Tin lowered his face and said softly, "Dad, I'm sorry." Phạm Lâm didn't hear the words, "I'm sorry." He only heard, "I am teaching him. I am right." When Mrs. Hunt accidentally said something against his view, Phạm Lâm cut her off. "What do you know to talk? You stay around the house. Don't discuss big matters." Mrs. Hunt fell silent, not because she agreed, but because speaking more would only invite more coldness. In Phạm Lâm eyes, everyone had faults. Only he did not. And that was when the ego began to swell like a shadow, covering the entire house. One day in the market, something happened. A sack of rice went missing from the communal storage. The whole village was in an uproar because the communal storage was where the poor contributed rice by the scoop to prepare for flood season. The village chief called a meeting. Everyone looked at one another uneasy. Phạm Lâm stepped forward, voice firm. "If something's missing, it must be found. We can't let this become a habit. Whoever steals once will steal again." He spoke as if he were the law, and people listened because he was rich and because he had authority. He looked straight at a man named Bayduk, an hired worker who often came and went around the rice storage. "I've seen you lately, often hanging around there." Bayduk went pale. "Sir, I only help carry things." Phạm Lâm pressed lightly. "If you're innocent, what is there to be afraid of?" That sentence sounded fair, but in truth, it was a knife. Because when the rich say, "If you're innocent, what is there to fear?" they forget that the poor are afraid even of the shadow of power. Bayduk's house was searched. The sack of rice wasn't found. But Phạm Lâm still said, not finding it doesn't mean he didn't take it. He might have hidden it somewhere else. The crowd began to suspect, and suspicion, once planted, sprouts very quickly. Bayduk was looked at with different eyes. His wife cried, his children were avoided by their friends. Phạm Lâm considered the matter settled. He said, "That's how life is. Whoever is wrong must pay." But a few days later, a child in the village ran to her mother and whispered she had seen someone from Phạm Lâm household hauling rice at midnight. The news spread. The village chief investigated. In the end, it was discovered. The missing sack of rice had been stolen by Phạm Lâm own servant to sell. Bayduk was cleared. But the village's view of Phạm Lâm was no longer intact. Because he wasn't only wrong in suspecting, he was wrong in the way he believed he could not be wrong. He called it principle. People called it cruel. Bayduk came to the gate of Phạm Lâm house and stood there silently. No cursing, no shouting, just standing. Phạm Lâm stepped out and looked at him. "I didn't mean to," Bayduk said, voice hoarse. "You didn't mean to, but my wife lost her milk from crying. My children were called the thief's children. Wherever I go, I keep my head down. Phạm Lâm wanted to say, I didn't steal the rice, but the words caught in his throat. Bayduk looked straight at him. I don't need you to return the rice. I only want you to look at me like a human being. Phạm Lâm stood still. His ego fought violently. To apologize was like losing. Not to apologize, yet something pressed hard in his chest. In the end, he could only say, all right, it's over now. Bayduk gave a faint laugh, a laugh that hurt more than tears. And Phạm Lâm felt a small crack inside himself, but he immediately stamped it out with a familiar thought. He's too sensitive. He's weak. He doesn't understand the rules of life. Finding fault in others is easier than seeing fault in oneself. And that is how the ego survives. His son, Tin, grew up in the shadow of a father who was always right. He studied well and was polite, but his eyes always looked as if he lacked sleep. Not real lack of sleep, lack of a place to breathe. Tin wanted to be a carpenter. He liked the smell of wood. He liked creating something with his hands. Phạm Lâm laughed when he heard it. A carpenter? Does this house lack food that you want to be a carpenter? Tin said softly, I like it. Phạm Lâm lowered his voice, harsh. Liking is for children. Once you're grown, you must know what is right. What's right is to inherit my work. Tin fell silent. Many nights, Mrs. Hunt heard her son sighing in his room. She wanted to hold him, but she feared her husband's eyes. In this house, even love had to ask permission from the ego. One evening, Tin said, Dad, I want to go to the town to learn a trade. Phạm Lâm slammed the table. I raise you so you can abandon me? I suffered to build this and you say you'll leave and you leave? Tin's eyes reddened. I'm not abandoning you. I just want to live my life. Phạm Lâm sprang up, voice like a hammer. You live your life. Then what am I? Who am I that you dare talk back? That question was not asked to the son. It was asked to protect the ego. Tin could not endure anymore. The only time in his life he spoke loudly, you always only think about yourself. The air froze. Mrs. Hunt clutched her chest. Phạm Lâm looked at his son as if looking at a traitor. And for a very brief moment, he felt fear. Not fear of his son, but fear of the feeling that he was no longer worshipped as the center. He slapped Tin. A slap rang out like the sound of a bolt being shut. Tin looked at his father, not crying. He only said one sentence, I ask permission to go. That night, Tin left home. The next morning, Phạm Lâm still went to the market, still talked and laughed, still as if nothing had happened. But inside him there was a strange emptiness. Not pain like a wound, cold like blood loss. Mrs. Hunt cried, Sir, you did that. How would our son dare come back? Phạm Lâm snapped, If he goes, let him go. Life out there will teach him. Mrs. Hunt said through tears, But have you ever thought you were the one making him suffocate? Phạm Lâm shouted, Be quiet. Mrs. Hunt fell silent. But this time in her silence there was something hard. Not fear, but despair. A week later, news of Tin arrived. Not good news. Tin applied to learn a trade at a carpentry workshop, but was cheated. A workshop owner took his money and then kicked him out. Tin wandered, hungry. He was pulled by a bad group into transporting smuggled goods. He didn't want to. But when hungry, morality thins. When afraid, people easily do wrong. One night, he was arrested, beaten, locked up. Mrs. Hunt heard the news and collapsed. Phạm Lâm stood frozen. His hands trembled, but he forced them closed again. The ego flared up once more. He's stupid. He didn't listen to me. He's stubborn. But at the same time, another voice sounded in his heart. A very small voice. It's me. He wasn't used to hearing that voice. He hated that voice. It threatened his rightness. But it kept repeating, it's me. Phạm Lâm went to find his son. He went up to the town, into the holding facility, and saw Tin curled in a corner, face bruised, eyes swollen. The son who had once been polite now looked at him like a stranger. Phạm Lâm opened his mouth, about to say, See, I told you. But the words stuck because they were too poisonous. Tin said, voice hoarse, Dad, why did you come? Phạm Lâm choked. He wanted to say, I love you, but he had never said those words. He wanted to say, I'm worried, but he feared being weak. In the end, he could only say, come home. Tin sneered, what home? That sentence slid through his throat like a knife. Phạm Lâm walked out of the facility, stood in the crowded street, and suddenly felt lost. Everything around him was still bright, but inside him it was dark. He passed a small roadside temple. The bell wasn't loud, only a sparse boom. He walked in. In the temple yard, an old monk was sweeping leaves, sweeping slowly, sweeping quietly. Unlike the people Phạm Lâm had met before, those who talked, preached, argued. Phạm Lâm asked bluntly, "Master, how do I stop suffering?" The monk didn't answer right away. He looked at Phạm Lâm and asked, "Are you suffering because of your son, or because you feel you've lost?" Phạm Lâm jolted. It was the first time someone had asked directly at the place he hid. He growled, "Lost what?" The monk smiled. "If you only suffered because your son is in pain, you would have cried, but you didn't cry. You are angry. Anger is because the ego was struck." Phạm Lâm stiffened. The monk continued, his voice calm as water. "The bigger the ego, the deeper the suffering. It is deep because you use being right to cover fear." Phạm Lâm wanted to argue, but he had no strength. The monk asked, "Do you often search for other people's faults?" Phạm Lâm answered quickly, "I only tell the truth." The monk lifted a leaf, held it before his eyes. "What leaf is this?" "A Bodhi leaf." "Who did it fall because of?" Phạm Lâm fell silent. The monk put the leaf down. "You see fault everywhere because your mind is dark. When the mind is dark, the world is dark. You see life full of people at fault. You see your son at fault. You see your wife at fault. You see the poor at fault. And then you suffer because you live in a world full of faults." Phạm Lâm breathed hard. "So, what should I do?" The monk looked at him. "Don't begin by trying to fix others. Begin by looking back." "Looking back at what?" "Looking back at where you place yourself." Phạm Lâm didn't fully understand, but he felt that sentence like a door. Phạm Lâm sold part of his warehouse to raise money to help his son. He had to bow his head to someone he had once despised. He had to beg people he had once only commanded. Each time he bowed, his ego hurt, but it hurt differently, like a boil bursting, ugly, yet relieving. He went home and for the first time sat down beside his wife and said softly, "I was wrong." Mrs. Hunt looked at him, unable to believe her ears. Phạm Lâm continued, voice trembling, "I thought I was right to hold the house together, but I was too right, and I made the house dark." Mrs. Hunt burst into tears, not crying because she had won, but crying because at last she could see this man being human. Tin was released and came home, thin, fear still in his eyes, but he walked into the house and saw his father sitting and waiting, not standing like a king. Phạm Lâm did not ask, "Do you see now?" He only said, "Eat," just 2 words, but they were softer than every sermon. At the meal, Phạm Lâm did not criticize his son for clumsy chopsticks, did not criticize his wife for salty food. He only ate. The oil lamp's light was still as yellow as before, but the house was brighter, because the biggest shadow had grown smaller. Phạm Lâm went to the market and met Baiduk. This time, he bowed his head. "Back then, I was wrong. I'm sorry." Baiduk stood frozen, then his eyes reddened. Not because an apology erased the pain, but because an apology returned dignity. And Phạm Lâm realized something. Only when he stopped searching for others' faults did he see that people were also suffering, also afraid, also weak like him. His mind brightened a little, and the world around him grew less dark. People fear being looked down on more than being poor. They fear failure more than they fear hunger, because they fear no longer being right. And because of fear, people enlarge the ego to cover it. But the bigger the ego, the deeper the suffering. The wise do not search for others' faults, because searching only makes the mind darker. And when the mind is bright, the world is bright too, not because life changes, but because we change the way we see. If you listen to this and suddenly remember a time you said something right that hurt someone, perhaps you too once let your ego become larger than your compassion. Tonight, before you sleep, try one small thing. Don't search for anyone's faults. Just look back at one thing you did and ask, do I want to be right or do I want peace? If you want me to tell another story, also quiet, also full of drama, based on another teaching of the Buddha, leave the word bright in the comments. So I know you are still listening.